Hello there, Stuart Holman with you for another week of devotionals in the books of 1 and 2 Kings. In our journey through the narrative of the whole Bible in a year, we've paused for a few moments at the reign of King Solomon. We've paused at the apparent high point of his reign and, just as importantly, the high point of the life of the nation of Israel. They are one people, God's people. They are living in their promised land. They have the walled city of David with both temple and palace. They are enjoying the blessing of God dwelling in their midst in the temple at Jerusalem. So God's people live in God's place under God's rule, mediated by the Davidic monarchy. Solomon has been the grandest and the wisest of kings, such that God's blessing of wisdom is shared with the nations, even as the Queen of Sheba came to visit and pay tribute. We get a taste of Solomon's wisdom in the book of Ecclesiastes, so stand by for those devotionals too. But as we noticed in 1 Kings 11, so very soon things turn bad as Solomon gives his heart to many foreign wives, and he mixes his worship of God with the worship of many foreign gods, the foreign gods of his many foreign wives. And so begins a new movement in our journey through the Bible, from monarchy to exile, from blessing under David and Solomon to servitude as slaves under the rule of a foreign tyrant. This is the terrible decline under the leadership of successively worse kings until ultimately God must act in judgment. So what happened? How did the rot set in? Back in 1 Kings 11, we saw that Solomon's heart was divided. Opposition to Solomon then arose. It arose from power brokers like Hadad and Rezin, and especially Jeroboam. And so in 1 Kings 11, verses 29 through 39, we read that Jeroboam meets a prophet outside Jerusalem who tells him that God will give him 10 of the 12 pieces of Israel. Solomon, for his part, seems to know something's afoot, and so he tries to kill Jeroboam. But Jeroboam flees to Egypt for protection and also to make some alliances there. And so 1 Kings 11:41 concludes the story of Solomon with the briefest of summaries. As for the other events of Solomon's reign, all that he did and the wisdom he displayed, are they not written in the book of the Annals of Solomon? Now, unfortunately, we don't have this other reference book, the Annals of Solomon. It's been lost over time. But our author historian here refers us to this other source if we wanted more details. Verse 42. Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. Then he rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David, his father. And Rehoboam, his son, succeeded him as king. Now this is a formulaic conclusion to the end of Solomon's life, very much like so many others in this account in 1 and 2 Kings. There's a pattern and a rhythm to it which will be repeated at the conclusion of each successive king's reign. So often, in fact, that it will only be the variations to this pattern that catch our eye after a while if we're reading all the way through. And so Solomon's son Rehoboam is made king in Solomon's place. But he's only made king in Jerusalem in the south. At the beginning of 1 Kings 12, Rehoboam goes to Shechem in the central northern part of Israel, where he seeks to be made king now by all Israel. As Rehoboam arrives in Shechem, it seems that Jeroboam's beat him there, coming up out of Egypt. And Jeroboam puts a test in front of Rehoboam. Verse 4, "Your father put a heavy yoke on us." Remember, the yoke is the large piece of timber that the oxen have to pull. "But now lighten the harsh labour and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you." Now, someone had to pay for all of Solomon's grand building projects, right? It's not just the great temple at Jerusalem and the royal palace, but all the other temples to foreign gods and royal accommodations for his many foreign wives, mostly located in the southern part of Israel around Jerusalem, And that revenue came from a substantial tax burden on all of Solomon's subjects. That's the heavy yoke to which Jeroboam refers. So how will Rehoboam respond? He asks for time to consult. First, he consults the elders and counsellors of his father, who give him sage advice. They urge conciliation, a lighter touch. But Rehoboam also consults with his mates, who simply want to please him, to puff him up. Notice their appeal to Rehoboam's pride. Show yourself to be bigger, stronger and tougher than your father. So 3 days later, when everyone gathers to hear Rehoboam's answer, he rejects the advice of the elders and he says, "My father made your yoke heavy, I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions." If Solomon's weakness was lust, his passion for many foreign wives, Rehoboam's weakness was pride. He needed to be a someone, needed to be thought of as important, esteemed like his father. Rehoboam's motivation is the key. If you thought my father was impressive, I'm greater. Well, what do the people say in response? They say, "We're out of here." The 10 northern tribes abandon King Rehoboam and instead make Jeroboam their own king. Rehoboam's pride and his thirst for power means that the now divided kingdom appears to frustrate the blessings promised by God, and it gets worse from there. If we were to read the summation of Rehoboam's rule in Jerusalem in 1 Kings 14:21 through 31, we'd see how far he departed from the covenant. Under Rehoboam, Judah, that's the southern kingdom, Judah did evil in the eyes of the Lord. By the sins they committed, they stirred up his jealous anger more than those who were before them, who had done. They also set up for themselves high places, sacred stones and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every spreading tree. There were even male shrine prostitutes in the land. The people engaged in all the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. For all Rehoboam's pride, his rule began a serious decline away from God. Many of Solomon's proverbs are recorded for us in the book of the Proverbs, which Rehoboam had clearly not taken to heart. Here's one such proverb, chapter 11, verse 2. "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom." So how do we protect ourselves from pride, especially as we reflect upon Rehoboam's failings, which began Israel's headlong slide into spiritual decline? The opposite of pride is not low self-esteem. The antidote to pride is not being told that you are useless and worthless. The antidote is actually a God-centered perspective. We see ourselves in relation to God. And perhaps you've noticed throughout the text of 1 Kings 11 and 12 the absence of any intent to consult God at such a crucial point in the life of the nation of Israel. No one asks God who should succeed Solomon, just as no one seemed to ask God who should succeed David. Rehoboam's planned coronation in Shechem had no priest, no sacrifice, no reading of the law. God is far from anyone's mind, it seems. Rehoboam has 3 days to consult, but no time for God. Instead, God intrudes into the foreground of the narrative only to speak judgment upon Rehoboam. Any sense of God at the centre is missing. Pride flourishes when God is ignored. We assume ourselves to be important, a someone, when we lose a Godward perspective. And so the antidote to pride is to see ourselves and others in relation to God, God who is infinite in power and authority, goodness and love. We learn that we're valued by God. We're not useless and worthless. We also learn that we are small and feeble in relation to this one who loves us so. Therefore, the best move we can make to regain this Godward perspective and so to undercut our own sense of pride is to fill our horizons with God and to respond to Him in praise. As we train and discipline our minds to remember and to recount the wonderful attributes and actions of God, in time, our pride shrinks and our delight is stirred in God. Praise the Lord, my soul. Lord, my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendour and majesty. The Lord wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent and lays the beams of his upper chambers on their waters. He makes the clouds his chariot. He rides on the wings of the wind.